So with that, we'll do some quick introductions. My name is Evan Schweitz. I'm the Senior Transit Planner here at Metro, and I guess the host for today's conversation.
I'm Annie Pagaga. I'm the Communications Specialist at Metro, and I'll be assisting Evan with the presentation.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Eren Gómez y yo estoy en el lado de los operadores. También en el lado de la comunidad hispana o latina, por si tenemos alguna pregunta y necesitan ayuda, me pongo a su disposición. Bienvenidos.
Great, and thank you all. I'm Lauren Sensick. I'm the CEO of Metro. I'm really excited about this conversation today, and if you'll indulge me for a second, just want to talk a little bit about our Metro Next process. What we're trying to do here is we're really looking at creating a vision for how transit should look and will look in the future in the Omaha region. So we're trying to really set the stage for how we want to be able to move about the city using transit in 5 to 10 years from now. And there's a lot of topics that go into this. There's a lot on infrastructure, where and how frequently we run our routes, what types of service we offer. And there's going to be a lot of conversations, and we've had some really good feedback on these topics already. Today, we're really focusing on rider amenities and the rider experience. So we know that a big part of what it's like to ride the bus around the region is about how it is to get your information, what it's like waiting at a stop, walking to a stop. And so we really value your time and appreciate how much you're giving your lunch hour today on a Friday, and a chilly one at that, to really have this conversation with us so that we can understand the wants and needs of what transit will look like in the region moving forward. With our current resources, some of this will be challenging for us to do, but we really need to set the stage for what we want our service to look like, how we want to grow, what improvements we want to make, so that we can set out with the help of the community and our partners to really solve some of those challenges that we're currently facing. So it's great that you're here to have this conversation. As I mentioned, we're going to be really focusing on the rider amenities piece today, but we want to hear your thoughts on the experience overall. There's going to be more opportunities and more conversations in the future, but thank you.
All right, thanks, Lauren. So as Lauren mentioned, this is a year-long strategy effort that we've been working on. So we're kind of in the middle section right now of framing the transit network and supporting additional connections. But the work that came before this was helping us kind of understand the current realities that our agency is facing and how we want to grow as we look to the future. And so a big part of that has been a partnership with ConnectGo through the Chamber of Commerce, and looking at especially how employment challenges throughout our region and future economic growth potential is so closely tied to public transportation and our ability to help people connect with the places they need to go. So through our earlier engagement, we presented to over 200 people in earlier phases of the outreach, heard lots of great feedback. And one of the things that we talked about in that earlier round, as Lauren mentioned, is the challenge of funding. So if we look at Omaha's transit spending per capita, we're at about $40 per person per year. And when you compare that to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is smaller than Omaha, obviously smaller transit system, but they're spending $55 per capita. So that investment is a pretty direct correlation with the amount of service they're able to offer to their community. And then we also looked at other communities like Kansas City, Des Moines, Minneapolis, all of which are providing quite a bit more investment in transit than Omaha. So it's a unique challenge that we want to face head on as we look through the Metro Next process and kind of forecast where we want to be and how we want to get there over the next 5 to 10 years. So as I mentioned, we had lots of great feedback, about 600 comments from earlier rounds of engagement. And 9 out of 10 of those comments requested more service than we operate today. So now we're to the point where we're ready to get into the specifics of, if we were to make enhancements, what exactly do we want that additional service to look like? Based on the feedback that we got early on, we wanted to kind of have different topic sessions that people could drop into over the next few weeks to really talk about what's most important to them. So today's session is the second meeting on the topic of rider amenities. The first one was held this past Wednesday evening. And then next week, we'll be talking more in depth about our routes and schedules. So that's definitely something you'll want to tune into. We've got other topics after Thanksgiving on the rapid transit network and additional meetings to be scheduled on fare payments and policies and new types of service. So stay tuned for that. And again, all of the feedback that we collect over the course of the next few weeks is going to be directly used to put together our potential strategies for the plan. And we'll report that back with additional meetings in the new year. So again, today's meeting is on the topic of rider experience. And as Lauren kind of helped explain, that's all the things you encounter before you step on a bus. So it's walking to the stop, it's planning your trip, sitting at the stop and making sure you feel confident and comfortable and safe as you wait for the bus to arrive. So there's lots of different components of ways we can improve this rider experience before you get on board. So we're going to take some time and talk about each of these topics individually. And then there will be some live polling and then a question and answer session at the end. So the first topic is pedestrian accessibility. And we know that every rider starts and ends their trip with a pedestrian trip. So you have to be able to get to the bus stop before you can ride. And then once you get off the bus, you have to make it to your destination. And so the pedestrian connections are vitally important. One thing that you can see in the photo on the bottom left is the bus is approaching a bus stop at 24th and Hamilton, just north of our building here. And there's kind of a grassy strip in between the curb and the sidewalk. And we hear from quite a few riders, especially in winter, that zone from the bus stop to the sidewalk can present quite a challenge, especially if it's piled high with snow. So one potential strategy that we know of to improve pedestrian access would be to have like a paved landing area that makes a more flat transition back to the sidewalk at our stops. Now we do have over 2,000 stops in our system, so it would be quite the undertaking to try to go and pave every single one of them, and a lot of concrete too. So it's just something that we're considering and trying to put together our best strategies of how we would go about making some improvements like this. Another thing to note in this photo is this little path that's been worn through the grass from the sidewalk to the nearby business. And that illustrates pretty clearly that there's a need for a sidewalk connecting to the bus stop to some of those outer destinations nearby. And so those types of connections aren't something that we have traditionally been involved with. Usually that's up to a property owner or other organization. But we're considering how we can be more active partners in the process of identifying these gaps and coming up with ways to address them. Another picture that I have here in the center is of West Maple Street and the bus stop along Route 4. And you can see these passengers are walking along the sidewalk very close to the street, and the guardrail is on the outside of the sidewalk. So it puts the pedestrian kind of in an area where they're more exposed to traffic. And so walking in this area is loud, it feels very close to the street, and it feels unsafe. So these are the types of things that can cause people to not ride transit. And as I mentioned, it's often outside of our control. And so we want to think about how we address these barriers and improve the experience for our riders. And then the last photo that we have on the screen is the Keystone Trail near Q Street. And the picture shows the trail coming up to the street level, and there's a dirt path from there to the bus stop. And it's clear that many people have walked over to the bus stop to make this connection, but that experience is not very positive. And the other thing to note here is we've got a bus stop on the other side of the street for the alternate direction of the route. And it's always important to keep in mind that anytime you're boarding the bus to travel and make your trip, you also have to make your return trip. And so even if it's safe in one direction, if the other direction is unsafe and crossing the street feels unsafe, that can impact whether people choose to ride at all. So safe crossings near bus stops is another thing that we want to take a close look at. So the next topic that we have here is bike connections. We know more and more people are using bikes to access our bus stops, and we're really excited about that. So we've tried to make some intentional improvements of adding bike racks nearby, integrating with bike routes throughout the city. And so as that bike network continues to grow, we want to make sure that we're growing in the same ways and making sure it's a seamless transition for someone to take that last mile of their trip, connect to the bus stop, and then get on board. So we've got a picture here that shows bike lockers, and that's kind of an upgraded amenity over a traditional bike loop, where if you have an expensive bike or you're going to be leaving it there all day, you can have it enclosed out of the elements and know that it's going to be safe there until you return. Another picture that we have is from Washington, D.C., and it shows a bike path and a bike share station right next to the bus stop. And so you can tell that lots of people worked intentionally to plan so that this would be very convenient for folks as they move to and from one mode and transition to another. It's all very seamless. So those are the types of things we want to be thinking about as we look to how we're growing in the future. I also wanted to take a moment to introduce and talk about B-Cycle, and we've got Benny Foltz, the executive director, with us today. And we've been happy to coordinate with Benny and his team on a project along Dodge Street to add B-Cycle stations to improve that connectivity with Orbit. So Benny, I don't know if you want to hop on for a second and say a few words, but glad to have you join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And congratulations on the Laurels Award last night as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. So what we see in the bottom left picture is the Orbit route, and you can see the darker gray Bs. And those are our planned new Heartland B-Cycle bike share stations that we'll be installing in hopefully the summer of 2022. Two of them on there, the 10th and Douglas, and the 19th and Douglas, which actually is not on there right now. Those are already installed and live and ready to be used. We installed the 19th and Douglas just last week, which is why it's not on this map. And it's already getting great use for that first last mile connection that folks are wanting to use. We'll be putting e-bikes at all these locations as well. The remaining 10, we're shooting for June will be the goal. You can see we'll be as far west as the Keystone Trail, which is exciting. That'll actually be our furthest west station in Omaha. And it'll be right at the Orbit stop with an entrance to the Keystone Trail. And then the 72nd and Dodge one we're excited about as well. That'll be right at the intersection. And that'll be introducing bike share to a whole new area. But happy to answer any questions anyone might have regarding bike share and the Orbit stops.
All righty, thanks, Benny. So the next topic that we wanted to talk about is park and ride amenities. And park and ride is something that allows people to easily connect into transit, and that last portion of their trip is most likely either a drop-off by a family member or a friend or a taxi, or they're taking their own vehicle and leaving it there for the day. So we have heard quite a few requests for more park and ride options throughout our metro in every direction. And so one of the things that we try to think about with these is having clear signage so that people can find the parking lot easily and have a good experience getting on board. And so we've got about a dozen park and ride sites today. And in every case, it's an adjacent property owner, a business or organization that has excess parking. And so we establish an agreement with them to share use of those additional stalls. But the picture at the bottom here is an example from Minneapolis where the transit agency actually owns this parking lot. And that allows them to add additional features like lighting and security and wayfinding signage. You've got this clear marker that helps people know where to park and where to board the bus. Nice landscaping and good sidewalks. So again, that's not something that we have traditionally done, but that doesn't mean it couldn't be a consideration in the future. So we're looking for feedback on whether folks want to see us move this direction. And as we kind of go through these different options, there's many things on the menu. So hopefully something out there for everyone. And we're just trying to find out which priorities rise to the top. And with that, I'm going to transition it to Annie, who's going to talk to us about another thing that we hear quite a bit is improvements to our signage and wayfinding.
Thanks, Evan. So when it comes to the bus stop and catching the bus, that sign is one of the most important parts of making sure you know where to get on, where to make sure the driver will pick you up. And it can also help you know where you're gonna go. So as Evan said, we've definitely heard that our bus stop signs are kind of lacking in that information and that people would like to have things like the route number, maybe an endpoint destination, possibly including some schedule info, or the stop ID, which can be used for real-time text alerts, or even just to call into customer service and give them a clear idea of which bus stop you're at. On this slide, there's an image of some mock-ups from Seattle and their bus stop sign types. They range in size and kind of information provided based on where those signs are located. And that ranges from residential to commercial, how much right-of-way and space they have for the sign, while also keeping everything accessible. In the bottom right, we have a photo of one of our Orbit stop signs. And these include more information than our traditional blue Metro signs with the text code, our website, as well as the customer service number, and then the stop ID to make it really clear of what information is there. And then next to that is a photo from New York City with the MTA. This includes real-time arrival information, a static map of kind of what's within that quarter to half mile area of nearby destinations you can get to. Because let's face it, we don't ride the bus just to go to the bus stop. You go somewhere from there. That brings in that first mile, last mile connection too. So we really want to hear from people of what kind of things they'd like to have on bus stop signs. We will be replacing our bus stop signs in the next year or two. Our current signs have met their useful life. And part of that is we want to hear a little bit of the short-term fixes and the long-term fixes. So next we have our shelters and stations, and that brings us into more bus stops. Our shelters, which are shown in the top photo, are generally solar powered to provide lighting at night, giving that added sense of security, some weather protection and seating, depending on how long you have to wait for the bus. And then we also have an information panel where we use that to post information for our riders that we think they should know. Orbit stations have almost everything a shelter has, but they also have a raised platform for level boarding with our Orbit vehicles. They have digital screens that we use for rider information, somewhat more of our kind of Metro promotions, and they now have ticket vending machines, which we call TVMs, to be used with our UMO payment system, which is our new payment option. The biggest thing is that an Orbit station requires much more of like an infrastructure change. They require electrical power to run those signs, to run those lights, to run that emergency phone. Whereas shelters are a little bit more adaptable. They do still have to go through an environmental study and make sure that we can place them there, place the concrete, but we're not putting wiring in the ground. We also have benches at many of our stops. but the majority of the benches that you'll see at Metro bus stops are not owned by Metro. The ones that have advertisements, like in the top photo, are managed by a city contractor, and they're placed throughout the system where they deem it's appropriate. There are also stops, like in the bottom photo, that those benches are owned by the neighborhood or community organizations. We do love this one with the great mural of the bus stop, but we generally are placing the shelters, other organizations are placing the benches. And then Lauren, did you want to kind of talk about rider amenities as a whole a little bit?
Absolutely. You know, as we've kind of keep emphasizing today, we're really having these conversations partially because we want to generate some thoughts and ideas, but we really want to have conversations and hear back from not only our current riders, but potential riders, stakeholders, residents in the area to really understand not only your vision for what transit would look like, and particularly rider amenities, but really some of your prioritization of that. So one of the questions that we would ask that folks listening to this at home think about and get back to us and participate via our website is really helping to understand what amenities would best meet your needs, and really, you know, what would best improve your experience in getting to the bus. Is it improving pedestrian accessibility and really partnering with the city of Omaha and others to improve sidewalks and walkability? Is it about bike connections, park and rides, and the amenities of those park and rides, signage and wayfinding, shelters, stations, benches? You know, there's lots of things we'd like to do, and we're really trying to create sort of this vision of where we want to get to. But we also really have to kind of start to think about what of these things are most important for us to prioritize first. So that's just kind of a question we'd ask people to think about. We'll open it up to Q&A here in a minute, but that's just having those conversations, thinking about what that would look like. You know, is it signage? And what would that signage need to say for it to improve your experience? Is a really important piece of us being able to put this plan together.
All right, so finally, we want to talk about our communication updates and how we communicate with our riders. We have a variety of ways that we push out information through our customer service team, our printed schedules, our website, which has a full system map that is interactive and shows different things like park and rides and places to buy fares along routes. It also is a place to find long-term rider alerts, download those PDF schedules and timetables, and you can also purchase your fares and passes online. We have MyRide OMA, which is our real-time arrival bus tracking system. And that's in the bottom right corner is a snapshot of what it would look like if you are waiting for Route 14 at a bus stop and seeing how far away is it. MyRide OMA also has the ability to send text SMS alerts, and you can use that to subscribe for certain routes, certain bus stops, and you can personalize that to days of the week, depending on when you ride the bus. In the top right photo is one of our Orbit kiosks at our Orbit stations. And those use real-time arrival information in the top bar as well to give riders a better idea of, yeah, a bus might be coming every 10 minutes, but is it more like 3 or more like 9 from when I'm getting here? Next to the Orbit kiosk is a phone mock-up of our new UMO app. And UMO is our, like I said, our new fare payment system. Riders can use a smart card or they can use the app to pay. But in the app, you also have the option to plan your trip. And that gives you step-by-step directions from your starting location to your destination, not just from bus stop to bus stop. And you can set it up to go play by play, just like you would with a Google Maps or Apple Maps trip. And speaking of, we have all of our route information uploaded into mapping systems like Google, like Apple, like Bing. You can use all of those to plan your trip as well. And so one of the questions we would love for people who are watching this later to think about, to tell us, is how would you prefer to receive your information about your bus or Moby trips? Is that through our website, ometro.com? Is that through MyRide OMA? And if you use MyRide OMA, are you using the app? Are you using the website? Do you prefer the text option? Do you like using the new UMO app? Do you prefer to call customer service and get information through that? Or is something like Google or Apple or Bing your preference? And we want to prioritize what you use, and we're not going to stop updating these map websites or MyRide OMA, but we want to make sure that we're prioritizing what our riders are using the most. So like Evan said at the beginning, our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 17th, and we'll be covering routes and schedules, talking through what improvements in the short and long term we could do to help people ride the bus more, or even just start riding the bus. And just like with rider amenities, we'll have 2 sessions for that. After that, we'll have one on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Both of these will be virtual, just like our rider amenities meetings. So thank you for attending our rider amenities meeting. We really look forward to using your feedback and your input to create this plan and to really work towards better transit for a more connected region. If you want to stay up to date with the process, as well as just the regular goings on at Metro, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Twitter is the odd one out. It is under the Orbit name, but we still post Metro information there as well. And then we post all of our Metro Next information at ometro.com/MetroNext. You'll also find a feedback box there if you have any comments about rider amenities or about any of the improvements that we're going to be bringing to you in the future. Please leave them there. They come to us, and we always want to be responding to those and taking those into account.